Uh-huh.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Wow,
You
you've
know
already given us
that
so
trip
much about your
that
life.
that that trip was the first trip really because Shah Hassan came like in 83, I think, 82 for the conference in Champagne Urbana after, no, 83, after he left the school Northwestern University in 82, when he came because he his father was very sick, and during that trip he came few days later the father passed away, so he took
Hmm.
over the imamat, and then the following year in 83 I think they invited him in Champagne Urbana for a conference, Islamic conference. And then on 84, when he came back, he was invited by Imam Dawood Abdul Malik Shabazz in Cleveland. And then the mayor of the city, George Voyanovich, gave him the key of the city. Then the president of the city council, I think George Forbes, he gave him a proclamation. That was the first time really he started really having some type of, recognition by the, official, governmental authorities on the US.
And that
Later
was
on,
first
May
in Cleveland, you said, before
in
any other
Cleveland,
city.
March 84, yes. Then
Mm,
later on, Mayor Marion Barry did the same thing in Washington, D.C. And
wow.
then in Detroit, Michigan, with the Congresswoman Barbara Williams. Then later
Mhm.
on in New Orleans, they gave him a key of the city, then a proclamation. So many
Mhm.
cities did follow. Then Baltimore, with I forgot, Fume, or they call him Mayor Fume. So
Mhm.
this is when it started. So I spent 5 to 6 years in the US before I returned back to Senegal in 1992. Sheikh Hassan, I remember he called me one day, Sheikh, I want you to come back home because you are good abroad, but you are also good home. I need you home. So I decided. I told him, Sheikh, we are in uh, 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 March or April. Just give me before the end of the year. Then that year in October, I think October 92, I decided to come back home and then start getting involved with Sheikh Hassan. Because at that time, the African American Islamic Institute was already created, founded by him in 1988 in New York first, because I remember Sister Ashaki Taha was the first one to get involved with Imam Saeed, myself, a brother called Usman Jai, who lives now in Atlanta, and Sheikh Ibrahim Ahmad Dam, the grandson of Sheikh Ibrahim, who lives now in the Bronx. So we're the first to lay the foundation of the African American Islamic Institute. Sister Ashaki did what happened is Chasan was visiting, and then he asked me to set it up. So I wrote the proposal in English and gave it to Sister Ashaki. My English was not good. She was able to reformulate it in a better English, then give it back to me. I translated it in French, and then the minister was visiting at that time at the United Nations. Her name was Njoronjai. She was a minister in charge of the NGOs and the families and things like that. So we went to visit him, and he said, Sheikh, I'm in a mission abroad. There is nothing I can do officially, but as soon as I return back home, inshallah, I'll give you the accreditation for your NGO. And that was in October, I think. Then in November 23rd, she signed the accreditation for the African American Islamic Institute. And as you may know, the goal was to bridge the gap between the African American in America and their brothers and sisters in Africa, but based on the faith of Islam. Which mean that whatever was done, let it be in terms of education, health, socio-economic development, empowerment of women, helping the children, all should be based on the teachings of Islam. I think it was a big innovation because that was the first time, anyway, in the sub-Sahara region, to my knowledge, that there was an NGO which was really addressing those issues on a Islamic perspective.
Wow, mashallah. This is so much history, so much to
Yeah, yeah,
unpack.
yeah. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. So,
Indeed.
maybe going back a little bit, to you started to talk about the NGO. How did Sheikh Hassan kind of come up with the idea to create this NGO?
What happened is, Shia Hassan was a open-minded, modern-oriented, Muslim scholar. He knew that, his fathers and grandfathers did play a very good or important role in the spread of Islam and the Tariqa in this part of the world. But he knew that he was living on the 20th century and things has changed. and the tools we use to in the past in order to develop or propagate Islam and the Tariqa should also change and adapt themselves to the new technology and new way of thinking and new way of understanding of the people. So that's why he thought that, of course, we stick to the deeply rooted in the teachings of Islam, but whatever also Islam allows, we should do it. And he knew that he needed a structure, an organization will be, recognized legally by governments and by, civil society, by United Nations system in order to be able to deal with them. And talking to one of his uncles here in Dakar, who already had an NGO at that time, he told him, look, I think you should follow up my steps and create an NGO. And I remember that night he called me when I was in New York and told me, Sheikh, I was talking to my uncle Ahmedu, and he said we should create an NGO. What do you think? I say, Sheikh, it's a very good idea. He says, so I think the best way to do it is you start it to implement it in the US. And once the idea is fully understood, then when we come to Senegal, we'll do the same. That's why the African American Islamic Institute was created in New York, as I told you, with the few people I named. Then Sister Ashaki contacted a lawyer. Then I remember the first money we put was they asked $5,000. At that time, we didn't have it. But the people whom I just told you, myself, Sister Ashaki, and her husband, Brother Taha, may Allah be pleased with him, and Imam Saeed, and Sheikh Ba Ibrahim, Ahmad Damnias, and then Isman Jai, we put together, I think, money up to 3,000 something, and the balance was paid by, no, 2,000 something, and the balance of 3,000 was paid by Shaykh Hassan Cisse. I remember we were in Mecca. He told me, Sheikh Diery, bring my checkbook and write a check to pay this lawyer the money we owe him for the African American Islamic Institute. And once we paid the money, then they give us a 541c3 status, and that's how African American Islamic Institute started in America. Then I told you the following year, when the minister came to visit for a UN meeting, and Sheikh Hassan was visiting because they travel in the same plane, and Sheikh Hassan told him, I needed to visit you. She said, okay, you can come to my hotel. And we went there, and when we went to explain to her, and I gave her the text in French, the proposal, she read it, and she was very happy with it, and she said, as soon as I return home, I will approve it. And that's how I started here in Senegal and in America.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. And how did Sheikh Hassan decide on the name African American Islamic Institute?
Really, I think it was, it was not Shah Hassan who said, let's call it African American Islamic Institute. Not, boosting or doing, but I think I came with the proposal. And the name I gave was even Afro-American Islamic Institute. And it is later on than some sisters, I think Sister Khadija, I remember Sister Aisha, they say we rather change it to African American Islamic Institute. Because at that time, I think they felt that, the Afro word was some type of, pejorative. I don't know how you say it in English. But
Yeah, that's
what happened is, for me, when I grew up, the term Afro was very popular. So that's why. And as I told you, also, I was coming from a French culture, French-speaking culture, which is different with the English, culture. So this is how it happens.
yeah. And so for you, even the name Afro-American, why did you think of that name for this NGO, for Sheikh Hassan?
Well, because I knew that Sheikh Hassan had a mission, and part of that mission was to propagate Islam and the Tariqa. But I know also that, we as Africans, we need our brothers and sisters in America, because Allah make this, relationship very important. And I always remember when I read Malcolm said that the blood which unite us is stronger than the waters which divide us. So I knew that Sheikh Hassan really wanted to bridge that gap between African Americans and Africa. And that's why he was coming always visiting, trying to explain to them that Islam was the original religion of most of the slaves who came in America. Don't see the religion of your ancestors. So things like that. So I felt that, if we can set up something which will both include Africans here and Africans there in America, called African Americans, that's why, maybe that idea of African American came.
Alhamdulillah, that's so powerful. Was that I mean, I know, you're coming from Senegal, there's all this Pan-African movements and things like that. Was that kind of thinking very common amongst other, religious scholars in Senegal at the time, or kind of you and Sheikh Hassan were very visionary in your understanding?
Not really, because at that time, I mean, most of the scholars in Senegal or in West Africa, they thought that they have they are busy enough to do. They have a lot of work to do here than trying to spread Islam anywhere else. I think it is only Sheikh Ibrahim Niass at this time in the 60s and 70s, or in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, who really get up, travel in the 5 continents in order not only to spread Islam, not only to spread the Tariqa, but also to establish ties with the African diaspora, or even with the Muslim community, wherever they are. As you may know, that's why Sheikh Ibrahim Niass was the founding member of the African Islamic Conference, OIC. He was also a founding member for the Muslim World League, and he did belong to over 12 different world academic in the Islamic world. He also very close to Gamal Abdul Nasser, whom we all know was a very big Pan-Africanist. He was also a very good friend to Kwame Nkrumah, who is not a Muslim, but also a very big Pan-Africanist. He was also very close to Sheikh Toure in Guinea, who hosted even Stokely, Carmichael, and all these things. So Sheikh Hassan, by being educated, breed, and following the steps of his grandfather, we was just doing whatever was necessary in order to continue the work already established by his grandfather. Because Sheikh Ibrahim was a Muslim, but he considered himself also as a citizen of this world. And he thought that Islam has a very important role to play in the decision making. And if you're not participating politically in those activities, you'll never be able to have your word to say. I remember we had a meeting in Pretoria, in South Africa, in Johannesburg, and the topic was world sustainable development. And then there was about 1,800 NGOs who attended. Then the World Islamic League was there. But when we came and we registered, they collect, because there are so many NGOs, they selected only 21 NGOs to allow them to attend the opening ceremony with the president's head of states who came. I think you see the picture with Sheikh Hassan and Thabo Mbeki at that time, president of South Africa. So luckily, the African American Islamic Institute was selected. And Sheikh Hassan said, well, if that is the case, let's call for a meeting for all the faith-based organizations, not only Islamic, but all faith-based organizations, to get together and to set up our own agenda within this conference, because our words need to be heard. Then at that time, somebody called Noel Brown was the United Nations. Taj Hamad, who used to work with the International World Federation, Religious Federation, and representing them in the United Nations, was there. Wango, they had an association of NGOs called Wango. He was the head. Then they called for a meeting, and the government of South Africa sent 4 ministers to represent them. And during that meeting, Sheikh Hassan said, look, many people are calling me. I say that we as Islamic organizations, we don't need to be present in these activities. But he said, I think they don't understand. We are all citizens of this world. Our governments are members, and our countries members of the United Nations. They're paying their dues. And whenever the United Nations decide something, they discuss it in the General Assembly, and they discuss it with the NGOs also. If we as member of the NGO community, we are not present when they're deciding those things, then the voice of Islam will never be heard. That's why whenever they call these meetings, if we have the possibility to attend, we should attend. But not only that, we should attend, but we should make them clear what is the position of Islam about the issue they want to implement. And that's why every year here, for instance, in Senegal, before the United Nations General Assembly, Sheikh Hassan used to invite all the NGOs, regardless of their belief or whatever, for 2 days or 3 days in Dakar. He'll pay himself all the he'll finance it, and then they'll discuss the topic which will be in the General Assembly that year. then they'll make a report, then they'll give it to him. And that's why you see Sheikh Hassan every year used to come in September in New York at the United Nations to present that report on behalf of all those Senegalese NGOs who don't have the possibility to come and at the UN and make their voices be heard.
Wow, alhamdulillah, that's amazing. The way he would,
Mm-hmm.
bring together all of these different organizations, alhamdulillah.
Yeah,
So you
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned that a lot of what Sheikh Hassan was doing was very much carrying forward the legacy of Sheikh Ibrahim, who was, um, a big Pan-Africanist, big Pan-Islamist, and a big scholar in that way. Did you or Sheikh Hassan ever have conversations with Sheikh Ibrahim about like what he thought of this type of thing for the work of Sheikh Hassan, or even maybe Sheikh Hassan coming to the US? Were these ever things that came up?
Well, not to my knowledge, me, I never had a chance to discuss anything with Sheikh Ibrahim. The only chance I have is to come greet him, and he used to put his blessed hand on my head and pray for me. That's the only thing. Oh,
MashaAllah.
when I come to visit him, sometimes he look at me and he say, "Oh, you the son of Diery? Diery is the name of my father." I say yes, and then I was very proud for him just to look at me and know who is my father. But Sheikh Hassan maybe, but he never mentioned to me, having to discuss, these matters with his grandfather. Although I think that even if they didn't discuss it formally, by him traveling with him, listening to his speeches, listening to his conversations with head of state, with world deciders, Chiasan might pick up that is the right and the proper way, which will be good to follow the steps of his grandfather.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So, I'm gonna go back a little bit. You mentioned one time that you came to greet Sayyidi Ali Cisse, and did you have did you get to spend a lot of time with him? What are some of your memories of that?
Yes, yes, yes. I do have a lot of time to spend. Sayyidi Ali Cisse, many of the younger generation of my like me at that time, they had a very distant relationship because he will not accept any foolishness, if I can say that. He will like you to be always doing properly what you're supposed to do. If it is time to study. If it's time to work in the farm, to work in the farm. If it's time to go to the masjid, to go to the masjid. So many of the kids of my age at that time, when they see Sayyidi Ali Cisse, they run away. But Alhamdulillah, me, Allah developed some type of relationship with him. I used to eat with him. I
Mm.
used to sit, have attire.
Sheikh Jerry, hold on, you're muted again. Let me see if I can unmute you.
Yeah.
Okay, there we
Hello?
go. Yes, hold on, we
Yeah,
can
I
hear
say
you
I
now.
used to sit with him, travel with him whenever he was going to Dakar, or have lunch or dinner with him, or drink attire. Even I remember in his last days when he was sick, every day I had to have lunch and dinner with him, me and one of his wives called Maget Jai, and one of his, disciple called Amza, and one of his elder son called Mohammed Sise. So I had a very, very good and very strong relationship with Sayyid Ali.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. That's amazing that you have spent so
Yeah,
much
yeah.
time with him.
Alhamdulillah, that relationship when Sheikh Ali departed also continue with Sheikh Hassan. Because many people they think my relationship started with Sheikh Hassan. No, it started with Sayyidi Ali many, many years
Mm,
before even Sheikh Hassan was around. But at that time he
alhamdulillah.
was in Cairo going to school and then in Egypt. And as I told you, I used to write letters for Sayyidi Ali. I used to write checks for him, go to the bank, withdraw the money, bring it to him. Up to when he was sick, few days
Mm,
before he passed, he called me and said, "Come, there was a loan we took at the bank for 2 million something. I want you and buy what tomorrow. You take it and go and pay back the bank." And the following
mm,
day, he sent to buy what with the money. We go and pay the bank. You had a very,
mm.
very good and very strong relationship with Lady Ali. Yeah,
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Did you ever discuss some of, your aspirations and your plans about what you want to do, where you want to go with Sayyidi Ali Cisse?
Mm, well, no, because the way we've been raised,
Mm.
that person when you sit down with him, I mean, Dr. Samir, you don't move. You just keep
Yeah, of
quiet
course.
and
Yes, yes.
what you don't have any. I remember after I finished high school, there is a exam here for the custom to be a custom officer. So not, but on a higher level, like the highest custom officers. And then I want you to do the exam. But here in Senegal, the people, grassroots people, they usually say, if you're a custom officer, when you die, you'll go to hellfire. That's what they used to say. So I approach him. I tell Cheikh, I want to do the exam for custom officers, but the community here, people are saying this and that. Say, Sheikh Diery, if you want to do the exam, go ahead and do it. You have my blessings. And I'm praying that may Allah give you success. He say, people are saying that just because they don't know. He say, any type of work, if it is sweating to win a wage, a salary, it is good. Except those who may Allah make haram, like selling alcohol, drugs, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he say, any work, if you do it good, then it's good, and then Allah will even reward you. But if you do bad, also Allah will punish you. He say, in any work, you have to stick with what the religion of Islam teach you. But there is no job which is haram. That's what he told. I think that's the only time I can remember really talking to him about my goals and my objectives or what I wanted to do.
That's so profound and something that, a lot of us forget. That's
Yeah.
such beautiful advice. Alhamdulillah.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Alhamdulillah.
mentioned that when Sayyidi Ali passed, your relationship continued on with Sheikh Hassan. What was your relationship from the beginning with Sheikh Hassan?
Well, it was the beginning of a murid to his follower because I do know that, his grandfather appointed him imam, but we come from, the same family when it comes to blood. So, and whoever at that time knew Sheikh Hassan, if you have a little vision, you know that this person will be a great man because he was already a great man when he was a child, even if people didn't know. And when he was going to school in the States, we used to have a, communication, not by phone all the time because phone was very expensive here in Senegal, but by letters. I remember me writing him letters when he did his first Maulid in New York. Also, I remember writing him letters to congratulate him for a Maulud he did, and they broadcasted it on the Voice of America.
Wow.
So I remember him writing him letters when he went to visit Jamaica and come back. Even coming back, he brought me a lot of records of Bob Marley. I do remember. So we had a good relationship at that time. And whenever he was visiting in Senegal, every day morning to from breakfast to going to bed, I was with him. Mhm. That's how our relationship developed. Mhm.
And so how did it kind of change once he became the imam?
Well, it didn't really change. It just confirmed what we are already doing. Later, I get more closer, and there was more way to help him because at that time many Americans started coming because I used to know in 82, 83. That's when the Americans start coming 83, and we established the Quran school with Sister Amina Abdul Karim who came for the first and the woman here, and the Sheikh Bitey who was the teacher. But most of those Americans coming at that time, there was nobody to speak English with them except Sheikh Hassan, maybe myself, and maybe very few couple of brothers from Nigeria or from Ghana. So it was me who really was doing that, job of, like chaperoning the Americans, taking them to the market, going with them to Dakar, picking up at the airport, so many different things. I was the only one who was doing it because Shahsan couldn't do it and didn't have the time. So I was really, helping on that side.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, I know I've heard the stories of even when Sheikh Hassan would have the annual conference in Gambia, someone was telling me
Yes,
that a
yes.
lot of the Americans, they would ask you to do the translations, right? So that you would be able.
Translation, yeah, yeah. I used to help on the translation, yeah. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So what was kind of your experience meeting a lot of these first American murids, whether in Senegal or in the US? What was that experience like?
Well, in Senegal, I was impressed. Why? Because I knew the American society, and I know, how America stand, and what I was reading in the papers, when I was seeing in the movies, I only knew about the black Muslims, and even what I knew and was different perhaps with the reality. I grew up as to be a fan of Malcolm X. I, loved him than any other person in the U.S. at that time because of what he was saying and what he was doing. Also, the same, love I had for Dr. Martin, Dr. King. I remember when I was in school, I used to read so many writings of Dr. King, and I still remember the day I opened the radio and they say he was killed in 1968. I'll never forget. So it was a relationship of a person who loved his fellow human being, but it was more that I consider the African Americans like family members. Yeah.
Mm.
So it was very, very important to me. And when I come to America, I do understand also that, a lot needed to be done to return them back their religion, their culture, and their languages. And
Mm.
I remember, listening to Farrakhan, who said that people
Mm.
criticizing him for not being, Muslim 100%. He said because they don't know where we come from. He said
Mm.
we cannot wake up in one day and turn around 360 degrees and change. He said these people, you have to give them time, step by step, until they mature enough to be able to fully understand and practice Islam. Hmm.
Mm.
And I remember in 1986, I think he was at the Madison Square Garden. I get off from work in New York and went straight to the Madison Square Garden to listen to him. The following day, Sheikh Hassan called me, or I called him. I say, Sheikh, I attended the meeting of Farrakhan, because at that time many people were whispering at Sheikh Hassan, he is no, he's not a Muslim. What
Mm.
he's saying, he don't believe, he's not practicing this and that. I told him, Sheikh, I attended the gathering at Madison Square Garden last night, and I see Brother Farrakhan do something which really impressed me. I told him he had the Quran in his hand,
Mm.
and he said, me, Luis Farrakhan, for 27 years, I've been a Muslim. And during those 27 years, I never fornicated, I
Mm.
never committed adultery, I never drink alcohol, and I never used drugs. I said, I see him doing this, see him doing that. Mhm.
Mm.
Then later on, the following year, he invited Sheikh Hassan in Chicago. That's where he made that speech to bridge the gap in the brotherhood. One where he mentioned that, when President Reagan said that he should not be allowed to get back in the U.S. because he went to Libya and Libya gave him $1 billion. So he said, this is a sheikh I call in Africa. And he told me, go back, you will return until you get to your home and nobody will tell anything to you. He said, I passed through JFK, came to my house, and they didn't even know that I'm back to the country. Mhm.
Wow.
He had a very strong relationship with Sheikh Hassan. The first time they met was in Hajj. And then later on, even he came to visit Sheikh Hassan here in Dakar, and we traveled with him in his plane to Gambia. And I remember
Wow.
the former ambassador of America, John Lennon Walker. He was a close friend also to Sheikh Hassan. He used to come from Dakar just to visit Sheikh and go back. He said, Sheikh, I saw you the other day on TV with Farrakhan. Say, yes, this is my friend. He said, is he a Muslim? And Sheikh Hassan said, well, for me, he is a Muslim, because the first time I met him was in Hajj, in Mecca, and only Muslims go to Hajj. Also, when he came to visit me, it was during Ramadan. I gave him drink, because in Islam, when you're traveling, if you want to, you can stop your fasting. But when I proposed him to drink, he said no, he was fasting. Also, when we prayed that day, he joined the prayer with me. When I visited him in his house, he asked a brother to call Azan, and we prayed together. Then for me, he's a Muslim. Hmm.
Mm.
Hmm.
Wow, mashallah.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
amazing. Alhamdulillah. So did you ever talk, so like you mentioned you've talked with Sheikh Hassan, obviously had such a deep relationship with Minister Farrakhan. Did you ever talk to Sheikh Hassan about Malcolm X? Like you were mentioning were so moved by his writings and things like that. Did you and Sheikh Hassan have those types of
Well,
conversations?
I know that I didn't talk to him directly to Malcolm, but he knew my position and my views on Malcolm, and he did also respect a lot Malcolm X, yes, because
Mm.
what Malcolm up to now, if you listen to his tapes or you read what he's writing, what he's it's something. The truth will be the truth. The truth will never get old. So I think any person of truth will always recognize that it is truth, and you cannot say this was true 40 years ago, 50 years ago, but today it's not true. No, if it was true, then it will be true for always. But if it changed, it's because they thought that it was true, but it was not true. That's the way I see it.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. What was Sheikh Hassan's relationship with Imam Din Muhammad?
Same thing, very strong relationship. I think even you see the pictures. I remember the last time we met with him was at the Drake Hotel in Chicago. He came for breakfast with one brother, I forgot his name, and we had breakfast, me and him and Shah Hassan, I think Chief Abdul Qadir Tair from the Dagomba tribe in Ghana. And then
Mm.
he discussed mostly about trying to see how can we join together hands and establish some business ties between Africa and America, but for the African American Muslim community. Yes. And also
Mm.
in 86, when he came to Chicago, he invited Sheikh Hassan. We stayed at the Muhammad Ali's mansion in Hyde Park in Chicago. And
Mm.
Sheikh Hassan led Juma prayer in his masjid. Yeah,
Mm.
and also many of his followers, let it be in Memphis, Tennessee, in Baltimore, I think many of these communities, he allowed them to welcome Sheikh Hassan, to listen to him, to allow him to lead them in Juma and to give them advice on Islam. May Allah
Mm.
be pleased with him. He was a very,
Ameen,
very,
ameen.
very good friend of Sheikh Hassan. Yes.
Ameen, ameen.
Mhm.
So you mentioned that, Sheikh Hassan would come to the US and he was so committed to the African Americans here. What kind of inspired him to invite them to come to Medina Bay and for him to set up so many opportunities for them in Medina Bay?
Well, according to what I know, he didn't directly invite them because Sheikh Hassan, he always say that whenever he goes someplace, if he stay 15 minutes, they know that he is a Muslim. They know
Mm,
that he is a Tijani, and they know that he is a descendant of Shaykh Ibrahim. But he say he never went, for instance, and calling people to join the Tariqa. He will call people to join Islam. And if they ask him about Tariqa, then he will tell them what is Tariqa. And if they please with it, they'll accept it. This is the way Shaykh Hassan used to operate. So I
mm,
don't think also he will not come and tell them, okay, come to Senegal. No. But, as I told you, you may know during his first trip, when he came from London to New York and then invited him in Sister Karima's house in
mm,
Grand Concourse, Concourse, the village on the Bronx. They had dinner. He said that night when they finished, they asked him to talk about Islam. He told them, my English is not strong. They say, Sheikh, the way you're talking to us, if you speak, we'll understand. He talked to them. Then they asked him about the Tariqa. He told them also about Tariqa. And that the night some of them joined, the Tariqa.
mm,
So it's not like him, but he know that this is the right path, and then he'll explain to you, but he will not force you or do any pressure in order for you to accept it. It's up to you to accept it. hmm
mm,
And some of them even had a chance to meet with Sheikh Hassan and his father. I remember Simam Said coming before
mhm,
Sayyid Ali passed away. He was in Medina Bay. I remember also the last Maulud of Sayyid Ali Cisse that night. Sister Karima also came to
mm,
Medina. So Bilal also from Detroit came with his wife and son. Yeah, those are very few African American from New York and Detroit who was able to meet with Sayyid Ali Cisse even. Mhm.
mm. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So I'm just going to tell you mentioned a little bit about Sheikh Hassan's travels to the UK. How did he start going to the UK? Was it for studies? Can you tell us a little bit more
Yes,
about
for
that?
studies. He said that when he finished his studies in Cairo and graduated from Ain Shams University, Ain Shams Institute, he said they offer him a job in Libya. Very good job, very good position, very good salary, with all the advantages. And then
Mhm,
he couldn't tell his grandfather, but he wrote a letter, give it to his uncle Sheikh Mamadou Makinyas, and tell
mhm,
him, when you go, you give this letter to my grandfather, but make sure after he read it, you take back the letter and bring it to me. But Sheikh Maki say when he came and gave the letter to say Sheikh Ibrahim Yas, he read the letter and put it in his pocket and didn't tell him nothing. So
mm,
later on, Sheikh Hassan say he came, and his grandfather told him, I heard what you said in the letter you gave to your uncle, but the position is very good, the advantage, the money. But if you want to do what I want you to do, you should go to London and study English. Sheikh
mm,
Hassan tell his grandpa, I'm willing to go to London, but London is very expensive, and I don't have a scholarship anymore. He said that I guaranteed for you. Say
mm,
that's when he decided to go to London, and he registered at School of African and Oriental and African Studies
mhm,
in
mhm,
London to study. And he says something very, very amazing. He say when he get to London, he didn't know nobody in London, but within a month, when he opened, his mailbox, it was full of invitation, and he didn't know
mm,
who told these people about him, his address or things, and they invite him to attend gathering. And he said he used to come out in London from his apartment to go take care of business. By the time he come back, he will recite the whole Quran. And he
wow.
say when they finished the school year in '76, they decided to send some students for field study in America, and that's how he came to America.
Wow, mashallah.
Mhm.
Did you ever get a chance to visit him in London or travel with him when some of his journeys to London?
Yes, I traveled with him many, many times in London, but I didn't visit him when he was there. But when he was imam and traveling to London, we went there many times to attend conferences or just to visit. Yes, I was with him many, many times in London. Mm.
Oh, mashallah, mashallah. So you mentioned that when you were in Medina Bay, you were the one who was engaging a lot with the Americans, picking them up, helping them in so many ways. Can you tell us a little bit about the early years of the Americans being there? Like what was that like? Who was there? What were the fellow residents of Medina Bay thinking when they saw the
Well,
Americans?
well, the fellow residents of Medina Bay were very happy, even I might say proud, to have their American brothers and sisters to come to Medina and to study the religion of Islam, because Islam is worldwide, and they could have gone in any other places in this world, but Allah make them choose Medina Bay, and the population of Medina Bay were very proud to have one of their sons, Shaykh Hassan, to go to America, talk to them, explain to them Islam and the Tariqa. They accepted it and come to join him here. He told me when he came first to from America, his father called him one day and say, Hassan, say yes. He said, do you owe some people money in America? He said, no. He said, then why these people? Because at that time there was only one phone. That was the phone of Saudi Ali. Say, why all these people calling you? He said, because these people, they calling me just because of Islam. Some of them accepted Islam because of me. Some of them joined the Tariqa because of me. And whenever they have, you know, things which, they want to discuss or questions which they want to ask or to clarify, they call me. This is the only reason they calling me, but I don't owe them money. And I say also, one day he was sitting with the American ambassador in his living room here in Medina. Then the phone ring. Then was one brother and his wife who had problem, dispute, and they always went to going to divorce. Then they say, let's call Shaykh Hassan to intervene. And then when he finished the conversation, the ambassador asked him, oh, you sit here on your living room and you are managing the affairs of our citizens in America. Mhm. So, community in Medina was very proud at that time to see American children coming here and in 6 months' time speaking, fluently the language of, Wolof, intermingling with the population up to a point that if you don't do that, this person his child is American, you will not know. And later on, even some of them, their parents or adults also came to stay, like Mustafa Abdul Azim. He came to stay, as mentioned, Bilal and his wife, who came also to stay. Many, Kafani, the late, many, many of them come and stay here, live with the population, you know, act like, if they're not even Americans, but Senegalese. It was very, very, very good relationship, and people did really appreciate and like it.
Mm. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. That's so beautiful. What was your relationship there? Like what were you doing? What was your relationship and what was the work you were doing with AAI in Senegal, whether it be the school or the NGO from the Senegalese side? What was your involvement?
Well, for AAI, I think I was my title was Secretary General of the AAI. But, really, when it comes to work, I think I was doing everything. I told you, from picking up a person to the airport or sending a child for vacation to, attending a meeting or going to Seoul or to, Jakarta or to wherever, they invite Sheikh Hassan and he sent me for a conference. So I had, my work was, whatever Sheikh Hassan wanted me to do here.
Mm.
But it
Wow,
was not
okay.
like you do this every day. No, no, no. I
Whatever,
might be
yeah.
doing this today and tomorrow I'll be doing something else. Yes.
Alhamdulillah,
I was
alhamdulillah.
polyvalent.
Alhamdulillah, that's the best way to be. Alhamdulillah. Can you tell us a little bit about Sheikh Hassan's humanitarian work in other parts of the African continent? You mentioned a little bit about, the conference in South Africa, but we understand Sheikh Hassan was very involved in so many things on the continent.
Well, to tell you the truth, it will be very, very difficult because we cannot do it in one session.
Of course. Oh, hold on, Sheikh Jerry, you're muted again. One second.
When it
There we
comes to education, you might say that, he had children coming from all over Africa to study with him. Let it be Gambia, Mauritania, let it be Mali, Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, Namibia, everywhere, Cameroon, Burkina Faso, Chad, Guinea. Everywhere, from Africa, children come and study under Shaykh Hassan. I think this is the first humanitarian was to educate the children. When it comes also to diplomacy, for instance, I remember President Carter, he invited Sheikh Hassan in Atlanta. I was there with Dr. Khadija, Sister Aisha Jeffries, Chief Abdul Khadir Tair. And President Carter said, Sheikh, I'm very happy to welcome you to my house. And your coming here is a blessing for the city of Atlanta. People know it or not, because today our team, Atlanta Brave, have won the World Championship. And he said the second thing is today it's raining, and we all know that rain is a blessing. And for a long time it didn't rain in Atlanta. But he said my need today is for you, as an Islamic scholar, to use the Islamic Brotherhood to help me in Africa. And say, Sheikh, to your excellencies, Mr. President, you know me, I'm not a politician. He say, yes, I know that you are not a politician, but what you can do, politicians cannot do. Being that the politicians fail, we want now to use the Islamic Brotherhood to solve some issues in Africa. Let it be in Liberia, because at that time there was a war in Liberia. Let it be in Sudan. That was the war between South Sudan and the government of Sudan. And it's one particular matter is my brother, my friend, General Obasanjo, the former president of Nigeria, is in jail. And I want you to talk to President Abacha to release him. Sheikh say, well, we will try. Then, he talked to President Abacha, and they say, Sheikh, one thing I do not accept is the President of America sitting there to run our country. Sheikh say, yes, but just between my relationship between you, I want you to release Obasanjo. He say, today, I'll not. He will not spend the night in prison. I'll ask them to do a house arrest and take him to his house, and then we solve the matter. Then that year we traveled with Sheikh Hassan, invited by President Omar Bashir to Sudan. We even went to the front to visit the military. He spoke to the military. They did a conference for 3 days in Khartoum. He gave Juma prayer at the biggest mosque in Andurman. He visited all the Tijani Mokadams and gave even a second Juma khutbah in one of the Tijani Sheikhs called Usainu Kaula. So he was able also to meet with President Bashir with my presence. Even they was going to sign an agreement at that time. But when we left there, after we talked to Bashir and everything was looking like smooth, then there was some type of atanta, and they exploded an helicopter which belonged to the Sudanese army, and that's what spoiled the relationship. But he always tries in Africa to help whenever it is possible. I remember also being invited by Alex Ali Jr., the former ambassador of America to Gambia, who is a grandson of Alex Ali of Roots. Then when we went there, he say, Sheikh, I want you to help me between me and President Yahya Jammeh of Gambia. Say, Sheikh, Excellency Ambassador, me, I'm not I'm US ambassador. He say, yes, but this man will listen to you more than he will listen to me. Then he talked to Sheikh about certain issues they have at that time. Sheikh say, okay, I'll talk to President Jammeh. And the Sheikh sent to President Jammeh and told him he wanted to meet with him. He said, Sheikh, I want you to go back. You come back on Friday. You meet me in Juma in the masjid of the palace. And then when we finish, we talk. I was there during that discussion. And Sheikh told him all what the grief, if the American ambassadors, asked. And President Jammeh says, Sheikh, because you asked it to me, inshallah, I will do it. So this is a type of person, the work he was, doing on the African continent when it comes to humanitarian, like helping, educating the people. You mentioned the conferences in Gambia. Those conferences in Gambia was Islamic conference, but also humanitarian, because he will discuss, like the first conference, for instance, big one in Gambia was about drug and alcohol. So he was able, and the same day, he received phone calls from Geneva. Two guys who told him, Sheikh, I've been smoking since over 20 years. But when we listened to your conference, we decided to stop smoking even cigarettes. So things like that, he was doing it to talk about girl education, to talk about breastfeeding for women, to talk about, fighting female genital mutilation, so many different things. Even he did a great job, which people have a tendency to forget, and which I think one of his biggest achievements was for the first time in the history of Africa, since independence today. In 2005, in March in Abuja, Nigeria, Shaykh Hassan was able to convene a conference of all Islamic organizations in Africa, coming from 27 different countries to discuss about, reproductive health. That was the first time. And they did a declaration of Abuja when they mentioned all the positions of Islam regarding those matters. Let it be breast feeding, let it be female genital mutilation. So, any subject which is sensitive in this time and related to Islam, they did discuss it with big ulemas like Malam Tahir Bauchi of Nigeria, sheikhs from, Azhar University, the vice president of Azhar University. All of them, they came and they agreed and they did a declaration that from now on, this is how Islam should handle those issues. And that was organized by Shaykh Hassan. And they created a network called Network of African Islamic Organizations for reproduction, and Shaykh Hassan was the president, and I was the treasurer. So, when it comes to humanitarian, you mentioned also what he did, for instance, for polio, to fight polio in Africa and northern part of Nigeria, 8 states where polio was really devastating the children, and the Shaykh Hassan went there for 15 days. He was able to have 95% of the children vaccinated, get immunization for polio, which the, what the OIC, the Islamic Organization Conference Director, said. He said what OIC was an World Health Organization was not able to do it in 15 years. Shaykh Hassan was able to do it in 15 days, and that's why in 2007 they invited him in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and when we went, they gave him an award for champion of fighting poliomyelitis, and he met with the former Prime Minister of Malaysia. So, when it comes to humanitarian, as I told you, we cannot just in one sitting like that say all what Shaykh Hassan has been doing. When they had the fight in northern Nigeria between the Muslims and the Christians, we met with President Obasanjo, and that day even he told him about what he did for him when he was in jail, and he said, Sheikh, do you have a letter about regard? He say, show him the letter of President Carter. He say, can I make a copy? Sheikh say, no, you keep that copy because I have another copy. So that night, Shaykh Hassan told him also about having a conference, because he told him Muslims and Christians should not really have a problem, because we as a Muslim, if we don't believe in Jesus, our belief is incomplete. We believe in all prophets. And he told him, if you go to any Muslim house, you find somebody called Isa, which is Jesus. You find somebody called Yusuf, which is Yusuf. You find somebody called Yusuf. All the prophets, you find their name in Muslim house. It is only Christians who then name their children after Muhammad because maybe they don't recognize. But really, in fact, we Muslims, we don't have problem with Christians. Sheikh say what happened is there is misinformation and miscommunication. But if you call all the Christian leaders to sit down with the Muslim leaders, me as a moderator here in Nigeria, we'll be able to solve the problem peacefully. So, it's very difficult, Dr. Samia, because so many different activities which Shaykh Hassan was doing. But what I would like to mention is this. Regardless of that work, he never missed to go to prayer 5 times a day. He never missed to read his Quran. He never missed to go to attend funerals or naming ceremonies. And how many hundreds of phone calls he was receiving. With the time difference, he never slept 2 hours in a row without being interrupted. So this is the type of work Shaykh Hassan was doing. He was fully dedicated to Islam on both sides, spiritually and temporally. All his life, 100% was solely dedicated to Islam.
Subhanallah. It's just even as you were talking all about, I was like, how did he do all of that? And then, like you said, the phone calls, even the story you mentioned of the husband and wife calling him about the divorce. I've heard of stories of people calling Sheikh Hassan when they're about to give birth, and every time he knows so many people and has so many responsibilities, but he made
Yeah,
everybody
yeah, yeah,
feel like
yeah, yeah. Yeah, Hassan was a unique person. He was unique. He was unique. He was unique.
Subhanallah. Yeah, that's just that's so inspirational. I don't even know what to say. That's
Mm.
mashallah, that's so inspirational. Alhamdulillah. You started to mention a little bit about some of the other organizations that Sheikh Hassan was involved with. You mentioned, I forget the name, the different African Islamic leaders. What were some of the other, in addition to NGO, some of the other organizations, Islamic organizations that Sheikh Hassan was had positions in?
Well, Islamic organizations, as to my knowledge, the African American Islamic League, which is a founder, but he has accreditation from different organizations like ISESCO, which is the similarly the counterpart of UNESCO when it comes to Islam. He attended their conferences. He sent me to Morocco. ISESCO is the Islamic conference, Islamic organization for science and culture. He also attended, Islamic conferences in the Jordan, in Amman, World Islamic Conference organized by, I forgot the name of an organization. Same team in Jakarta with the former president of Jakarta, Gusdur, Abdurrahman Wahid, I think the Wahid they call him. Same thing in London, Islam and World Peace, 5 different Islamic organizations. Same thing like I mentioned in Khartoum, it was by the Islamic call. So he had, you know, relationship with many different organizations, but he was not really sitting because I told you he was so busy taking care of what he already had to be able to member of another organization. But he had a very strong relationship and he attended, their gatherings. Mhm.
Wow. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. That's
Even at one time, the World Islamic League lobbied to give him the seat of Sheikh Ibrahim, who is a founding member, but he told them no because my uncles are here and they are elder than me and they deserve more than me. So you rather give it to my uncle to sit on the position of Sheikh Ibrahim.
mm, alhamdulillah. So you almost every story that you share about Sheikh Hassan's accomplishment, you were right there, Sheikh Jerry. You were blessed with so many amazing experiences from all of your travels and all of your time with Sheikh Hassan. Like what? I know it's hard to pick, but like what are some things that really stand out to you?
Well, I think you cannot pick one and say this is really special. Whenever you're traveling with Sheikh Hassan, you learn and you see so many amazing things unfolding, and you know that this is from Allah alone who can do this. So it's really amazing. You don't know where to start or where to end, what to say and what not to say. So Alhamdulillah, it was a blessing to be with Sheikh Hassan for around 30 years, traveling with him throughout the world, having the opportunity for him to ask you when we go to see meet this president or this head of state or this and that, I give you the word you speak on my behalf. It was a blessing and an honor to be able to do that. Yes, but I think Zakaria is my witness when Sheikh Hassan passed away. Ibrahim Mahmoud Job, whom you know, we went to visit him, and he told me, Sheikh Geri, I had an advice for you. I say yes. He say one thing: it's not all what you know that you say. Certain things you're the only one on earth who know it. Don't tell it to nobody. That's what he told me. So there are certain things really, it's out of possibility to mention it to anywhere, but it's really amazing. Jason was a really amazing person. But if you know where he came from and where he stand up and who educated him and who put whatever is in him on him, then that was not amazing. And I think we all will recall the last conference international he did in Fez, the speech he made. I think that will be always remembered. Also, when they appointed him as the ambassador for the children in Dakar at the Meridien Hotel, also that's a very 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 big, an important gathering. But Alhamdulillah, I told you, nothing in Shia Hassan Park is small. Everything is big and everything is amazing. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So you spent a lot of time with Sheikh Hassan even when he would come to the US. And, like you said, Sheikh Hassan didn't, tell everybody to join the Tariqa, but so many Americans, African Americans joined the Tariqa. Like, what was that experience of like seeing new people learning about the Tariqa? You obviously grew up in it. What was that experience like seeing new people join it?
Well, I just say that it's a blessing. It's a blessing because whoever is have a common sense and sit down with Sheikh Hassan. If you're Muslim, you'll see a difference between him and the other.
Hmm.
And then, if you know that difference cannot come from anywhere but the Tariq. Same way, if you're not a non-Muslim, if you're non-Muslim and then you sit down with Sheikh Hassan, his manners, his ways of dealing with you, the respect he will show you, the love he will show you, you'll know that this man is different with the other people. And the only difference is because he's Islamic leader. Then if Allah open up your heart, you will accept Islam and join him. That's the way I see it.
Mm.
He had a mission, and whoever is blessed by Allah to meet with him, to sit down with him, you should be able to accept Islam. I told you about that trip we did in Pretoria. When we went there, the United Nations give a car, a limousine, and a driver to Sheikh Hassan. And the driver, who is an Afrikaner, for after 3 days traveling with Sheikh Hassan throughout Pretoria, because at every night we'll be invited in four different dinner. Each dinner, Sheikh Hassan will speak, and they'll ask him questions about Islam. So the driver was there always watching. And the third night, he said, Sheikh, I want to join Islam. Why?
Wow.
Because he has a mind, he has a heart, and he was seeing with his own eyes, listening with his own ears. Then he knew that this is the truth. Then he accepted the truth. Period. Mm-hmm.
Do you have a sense of how many people Sheikh Hassan gave Shahada to in his lifetime?
How can I say? Just in the last year, 2008, in Cameroon, he gave Shahada to over almost to 2,000 people. Then earlier that year, in 2007, in July, in Chad, he gave Shahada to a king and his 37 wives and children and the members of the community, over 1,253, and some of them living in remote villages. It was during rain season; they couldn't travel because of the rivers. So he left the Muqaddam behind to give them Shahada. So I told him that day, history recorded that when Sheikh Ibrahim went to Yende in the northern part of Nigeria, he said La ilaha illallah, and thousands of people repeated La ilaha illallah, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. And Sheikh Hassan said it is recorded at the archives of the African History Museum in London. But the same thing I told him, since Sheikh Ibrahim, nobody has done what you have done today, is to give Shahada to hundreds or thousands of people together in one ceremony. Mm-hmm. Nobody cannot say how many, inshallah. It was very rare or almost impossible, Sheikh Hassan, to go out of Senegal, travel, and come back without giving Shahada or without giving Tariq. Very, very, very rare. Impossible almost.
Subhanallah. Do you remember some of like those stories? You said 1,000 people at once, 1,200 people. That's Subhanallah. That's so amazing. Do you remember any instances like that during Sheikh Hassan's travels in the U.S.?
No, I don't remember anywhere in the US where Sheikh Hassan give Shahada to hundreds of people. No,
Okay, okay.
I think he gave Shahada to people individually or maybe collectively by 2, 3, 10, or but not by hundreds. No, not to my record.
Okay, okay. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So, what was some of the work that you were involved with when Sheikh Hassan would come to the US? You mentioned some of the things with the UN General Assembly, but you start to mention all of Sheikh Hassan's work in these different cities. I think you had an affiliation with Morehouse School of Medicine as well. Is that correct?
Yes, what Morghouse Medical School was related to the school Saint Christopher Ibn Marjob of the University of Ibrahim, which Sheikh Hassan and two of his friends, Professor Ibn Marjob and Professor Elijah Ibrahim Majob and myself, we founded in Dakar. And then later on, we had a relationship with Morehouse. I came there 2 or 3 times with Sister Aisha Jofri. We met with the president of Morehouse and have discussions and meetings on how to implement some ties between that medical school and Morehouse. Yes.
Wow. And so you just so casually mentioned the Al-Hajj, the Sheikh Ibrahim's medical school in Dakar. Can you tell us a little bit about Sheikh Hassan's involvement with that?
Well, what happened is, some Americans approached me when I was visiting with Shah Hassan and told me about they need to establish a medical school in Dakar. So I told them that, Shah Hassan is building his own Islamic school and he haven't yet finished it. So there is no way for him to get involved in a medical school because in life there are priorities and his priority is his Islamic school.
Mhm.
So he don't have one dime to invest. But if they're willing to do the investment, then our part will be administrative. We can help them to secure all the paperwork, accreditation, and things like that. And when they agreed on me on that, I took them to Sheikh Hassan. We sit down and discuss, and that's how everything started.
Wow. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Okay, I'm gonna go back a little bit. Sorry, we're going back and forth, but there's just so many things you're mentioning that are so interesting. I'm gonna ask one last question, and then maybe inshallah I'll open it up to the audience because I know we've taken a lot of your time. I wanted to ask you, what advice do you have for the Jamaat, especially for those people who did not have the opportunity to meet Sheikh Hassan physically in his lifetime?
Well, I don't have any advice because I think the advices have been done by Shaykh Hassan. The writings are here, the tapes are here, the videos even are here. From his own mouth today he hears. So if they really willing and dedicated, let them do their own research, they'll find out the truth of all what Shaykh Hassan has said. Because Shaykh Hassan always used to say, like, let's do what Allah wants us to do and stop wherever Allah wants us to stop. He said that is taqwa, belief. That's what he used to advise. So, and he said, Shaykh Ibrahim said he will follow the Prophet step by step, but whenever the Prophet stopped, he will not move. I think the same thing. Shaykh Hassan was not doing anything but following the steps of Shaykh Ibrahim. He is following the steps of the Prophet. We knew what Shaykh Hassan was doing. I mentioned it earlier. I say, with all this worldly work, he never stopped going 5 times a day to the masjid. He never stopped making his lazim on wazifa. He never stopped teaching. He never stopped reading Quran. He never stopped going to the farm. He never stopped attending funerals, naming ceremonies, and traveling in order to propagate Islam and the Tariqa. So the life of Shaykh Hassan is crystal clear. You don't need to have any advice to see exactly what it is.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Okay, thank you so much, Sheikh Jerry. I'm gonna see now,
You're
Hajj
welcome.
Bilal,
You're
can
welcome.
you help me? There may be some questions. Does anybody in the audience want to ask any
Uh,
questions either here
if they can
on?
make it short because my time for Asr is past now.
Oh, okay,
Mm,
okay.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khair, Sheikh Jerry, for your time. Wallahi, this was a journey. Just
Mm,
listening to
Mm-hmm.
you narrate the history and the travels of yourself and Sheikh Hassan Cisse radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Alhamdulillah. We want to thank you for your time and
My pleasure. This is my responsibility and my duty.
Alhamdulillah.
Certain things Allah bless me to be the only person to know it. Or
Mm.
even if some people know it, but they don't have the opportunity like I had to live it. Me, I know it, I witness it, I live it. So Alhamdulillah, it's my pleasure.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you very much, Dr. Samia.
Sheikh
Inshallah.
Jerry, is it possible for you to make dua for us
Mhm.
before we leave?
There is nothing stronger than Fatiha and Salatu Fatiha. Let's all together we read Fatiha and Salatu Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين اللهم صل على سيدنا الفاتح لما أخلق القاتل ما أطلق ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره العظيم سبحان ربك رب العزة والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you as
Thank
well,
you,
Sheikh.
Sheikh.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Diery.
Dr. Samir, you in California or you in New York?
I'm in California now. Inshallah,
Oh,
I hope to see you here, and I'll see you in Medina, inshallah, as
that's
well.
what I was going to say. That inshallah, whenever I visit the state, inshallah, I'll come to visit you in California.
Yes, we would
Inshallah.
be honored. We would be honored.
How is your husband?
He's good, alhamdulillah. He's greeting you as well. Thank you so much.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Diery.
And the children. Walaikum assalam, doctor. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good. I'm good, Sheikh. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Good to hear you.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Good to hear you. I
Alhamdulillah.
got the
Alhamdulillah.
kids in the other room. That's why the camera's off.
Okay, okay. Greet them for me, please.
For sure, for sure. Thank you so much.
Shukran.
Inshallah, we're
Alhamdulillah.
going to see you soon.
Inshallah. Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Jerry.
Alaikum
Alhamdulillah.
salam
May
wa
Allah
rahmatullah.
bless you. This is we love you and thank you. Thank you.
We love you too. We love you too. Alhamdulillah. Shukran.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Diery.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Same here.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
May Allah bless you, your family, keep you
Amin.
in good health. Alhamdulillah. Such a very amazing, motivational, inspirational talk. Alhamdulillah. I don't know if you remember me, but I used to always see you with Sheikh Mahi coming to New York, and I would, do the khidmah for
That's true.
everyone.
Your name is Amir Aziz.
Yes, it is, Amir. Yes.
Amir, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. You look good, Sheikh.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Halima, how are you, my sister? How are you?
How are you?
I saw your nice picture with Ahmed Tijani today.
Alhamdulillah, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah. Looking
How
great.
are you?
Alhamdulillah. Fine, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. How's your family?
Everybody is doing well, alhamdulillah. Walaikum assalam.
Alhamdulillah.
Dr. Karima.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Sheikh Jerry.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
How is your health?
The information, alhamdulillah. We're well, alhamdulillah.
May Allah give you good health.
Ameen, ameen, ameen. Alhamdulillah. Everything. We love
How are the children?
Alhamdulillah, everyone's fine. Alhamdulillah, they're all great.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Wallah, we miss you.
Alhamdulillah.
We pray that this corona is over so that we can come and visit Allah.
Ameen, ameen. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. So, inshallah, you know, Salat time is easy. So we want to let you go. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, shukran. And greet Kafani for me. I see that he was trying to speak.
Will do.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, Kafani. Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah.
Shukran. Jazakumullah khairan. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. This is the 6th episode of the Companions of Shaykh Hassan Cisse radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And inshallah, we have many, many more to come. This is brought to you by Ruh al-Adab Group in conjunction with Nasrul Ilm America. Inshallah, may Allah bless you all. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Assalamu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Imam Hassan.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, man. We just ended it.
No, alhamdulillah. I caught it on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Barakallah. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. How you doing, man?
Everything's good, alhamdulillah. So is you.
Alhamdulillah, man.
This is still being recorded on YouTube, by the way. This conversation.
Okay. Right.
No, I stopped the recording.
Oh, okay.
Still might be live.